Are you ready to apply for a grant? Here are 7 grant writing tips to improve your chances of getting that grant funded. Firstly, approach your grant writing experience like approaching the big picture. Think big picture. One of the first things I recommend you do is look at the guidelines and look for aims, objectives and outcomes. Get a highlighter, highlight those sentences and put them on the wall or on your desk in front of you and keep referring to them, because however you are going to respond, you are going to be ultimately responding to their aims, objectives and outcomes. And also think about how what you're going to do and your sphere of influence is going to contribute to a bigger change. It's a ripple effect. It's part of a bigger picture as far as the funder is concerned. And of course your contribution to policy direction. If there's a policy statement or a plan anywhere in the guidelines, read them. Get to know the language and be able to articulate that language in putting together your business case. Number 2 is to show them the evidence of the need for your project, because it shows that you understand the problem, and also it can help you to determine the opportunity and quantify it. To be able to show the evidence may require some consultation and some surveys. I'll give you an example. I had a client who came to us and is saying, look, we want to work with African youth. And there was not a lot of information. There would have been demographic information. There was information in television and on newspaper reports about gang warfare and incidents like that, but there wasn't a lot of sort of knowledge out there and information apart from anecdotal information. So what happened here was we had the potential, or our client did, of either talking to the elders in the community, but then you'd be getting one perspective, but the best thing of all would be to actually talk to the young people themselves. So that's what he did. He put together a series of questions, and over a 10-day period, he identified where those young people would hang out, and he went and consulted with them. He surveyed them, and he met me one evening, and he threw this notepad at me. It was a diary. He'd managed to get 257 replies in that period, and the information that he supplied was actually passed on to the funder, because there was some essential information that not even the funder had been able to access. So this was very, very valuable information. And you can, if the information's not there, there's nothing to stop you from going out and doing your own consultation. Data is everywhere. Data, the statistical data, the census data. You only have to go online and into the search engines. And in Australia, for example, we have the naming conventions data.gov.au, and for each state there's the state symbol in there, so it's data.vic.gov.au, data.nsw.gov.au, and any publicly available data is actually available through those government URLs. And also show them, if you've got a strategic plan, it's really, really good to show the funder that you've actually already identified the need for the project, because you've done that as part of your strategic planning process, and you see that as something that needs to be done. Now, when you're looking at identification of need, there's a number of ways you can do that. We talked about external data, and this is all the data that we just mentioned here about the census data, economic data, anything that's already available outside of the organisation. Then you've got government policy and plans. And I sort of refer to the local councils, local government plans, because it doesn't matter what kind of grant you're going to be doing, it's going to be located somewhere. And when it's located somewhere geographically, it's not too difficult to find out the kind of research that somebody else has already done. So council plans are great when it comes to looking for data for health and welfare, health and well-being, economic data, but also their plans for the next 3 to 5 years. And if whatever you're doing fits in with that, that's actually adding value to your application, because it's not something that you're doing on your own, in terms of something that's not really in fit with what's happening elsewhere in your area. Research data. Yes, it's great to have research data, but if you're limited on words, then don't spend too much time trying to add all that, where the research has come from, blah, blah, blah. Summarize it by all means, but don't waste your word count. Internal data in your own organization. Feedback from doing internal surveys, for example. Or performance records. Anything that's internal, don't forget that. And also evaluation and stakeholder feedback. The value of doing an evaluation is to collect data, is to measure change. And as you're doing that, you're putting together examples and stories and evidence of that need. And if you can, from evaluation, actually demonstrate the need for the next step in something you're already doing, then why not? Number 3 is to show them how you will manage the project. This question comes up every time, because the funder wants to know that their funding is in capable hands. So that's about the whole process, from the governance, how are you going to manage your contract with the funder, who's going to monitor to make sure that you're staying on plan, that you're going to deliver on time, you're going to deliver on budget, and you're going to deliver the specification. So what they're wanting is to be confident that their money is in good hands. So at that level, we're talking about the skills, the business and planning skills at the business level. Then we're looking at, well, okay, so what's the interface between the governance and actually the people on the ground who are getting the work done? So maybe there's a link there to the next step, which is going to be around the project manager. And they want to make sure that the project manager is somebody who's got the skills, experience, and history. Somebody who's they're going to be confident is actually going to make it happen. And then, of course, you've got the technical skills. Or you may have external contractors. Or you will also have the administration. And then in all of that, you've got all the governance and the staffing levels. What you also need to show them is your communication and how that works within the project. Also, you may have a steering group or a project reference group. So there's quite an intricate sort of area of demonstration of proof that you can bring into the application to be able to demonstrate and give the funder confidence that you're going to be able to manage the project. And also, if you're going to run this project as a partnership, what are the roles of the partners involved in this project? Number 4 is to get real about the budget. Now, when I was working in the funding area, one of the things we did look at when we were looking at the assessment was the budget. On our level of assessment, we were looking at to see whether the budget actually matched the story. And it was interesting because, I can give you the example of a particular application where the applicant was very, very careful not to list something that was ineligible. They were able to disguise what they wanted to do, but certainly you could tell that they were avoiding actually revealing that they wanted to do something that probably wasn't going to attack the funding because it wasn't eligible. So yes, they did a good job in the application, but then when it came to looking at the budget, they made the almighty mistake of including a budget line which referred to what was ineligible. So that's a really good example of making sure that your budget actually matches the story. The other way that the budget should match the story is in terms of value for money, or the ability to deliver on the amount of money that you're applying for. And this is just it. Do not offer to deliver a project on the smell of an oily rag. You're doing nobody any justice whatsoever. You do need to cost the project according to the level of expertise, the level of resources, and what you want to do. One classic example, I've mentioned it elsewhere, is a project that was funded for 3 years for $120,000, relied heavily on volunteers and 2 part-timers. Towards the end of 3 years, it really was beginning to wear out very, very thin, very, very quickly. Volunteers really didn't feel compelled, and they weren't motivated enough to really drive the project. So next time that we applied, we realized that we were actually applying alongside larger organizations who had, sort of more professional staff, in inverted commas. So we actually priced the project to actually utilizing staff rather than relying on volunteers. That project was funded 4 times more than the first time, at least. So it doesn't matter. That was a good lesson in learning that don't try to impress by keeping the cost low, because at the end of the day, if you can't deliver what you said you wanted to deliver because of lack of resources, you're not doing yourself any favours. Other issues to look at within the budget is do not apply for ongoing expenses. A funded project is a project, and therefore the staff are project staff. So you only fund them for the amount of time they're in the project. If they're recurrent staff that should be funded by the organisation, then it's not eligible. If they're part-time staff and this is additional time for them, yes, that's eligible. Income must equal expenditure. Now today it's easier because many funding forms don't allow you to move on unless you've balanced income and expenditure. But there are still application forms out there that allow you to put in your income and put in your expenditure, and there's no way of balancing the two. It's important that you actually put income, expenditure, and make sure that A equals the same as B. You may be required to source part of your funding from elsewhere. You may be asked the question, who else has contributed? It could be another funding organisation, another funder. Don't feel embarrassed, or if you've applied and it's not confirmed yet, still put it in there, because funders like to see that they don't have 100% exposure to the risk. And if there are other funders out there willing to contribute, and there may be different parts of the bigger project that they can fund that this funder can't anyway, but it's really good to see there is a core contribution coming in from different sources, including your own organisation. If you can, then contribute some financial resources. It doesn't mean that you have to, and certainly we will apply for grants where 100% of the funding comes straight from the funder. It just depends on the requirements of the funder. And in-kind match funding. Now, in-kind is a bit like we call the opportunity costs. So if you're getting volunteers, you might be buying, for instance, I'm thinking about men's shed developments, and there's a big sort of project that they're doing. So the project may be buying the equipment, but they may be building whatever it is, the machinery, or they may be building an extension or doing something, but they're using their volunteer time. Now what you can do there is equate to, well, how much would that have cost if we'd have brought somebody in to do that? So that's what's called match funding in kind. It's like, how much would it have cost, but we've used volunteers. But it's actual, it in its own way, it is a cost. It could be other examples of in-kind match funding. Could be a venue for an event or for training that's been donated by the organisation. Now, what would happen if that if somebody had hired that venue? Yeah, that's an opportunity cost in a way. So if you can identify the notional cost of what it would have cost to pay, then it's good to include that as in kind, and you'll probably sort of given the guidance to say how much of your application budget you can nominate as in kind match funding, and it shows again a willing contribution from the organisation. Number 5 is to show them you have the capability to manage the project and their money and any other risks you can think of. The key to a really good successful grant application is one that demonstrates reduced risk as far as possible to the funder. They need to be confident. We've already mentioned the ability to, the whole capacity within the organisation. The capability to manage the project also extends to previous history and the kind of projects and activities that you've done in the past to show your success. Success breeds success, it attracts the confidence. I can talk about a particular project some years ago, and when we applied, it was one where we actually got more than we'd asked for, significantly more. And we remember it was also in a very, very competitive, ultra competitive funding round. And we were surprised because it was a partnership of two small organisations, and in a time when other long-term organisations who had got used to funding suddenly found themselves with no budget. But these two organisations, I've got a copy, got a letter from the funder actually congratulating them, and were very impressed on the response to 2 questions. One was the identification of need and the amount of work that was put into that. We threw everything because we actually were not confident that what this project wanted to do was going to stand out. Obviously it did. But the second part was that capability to manage the project. And remember, we had 2 organisations here. So we actually included how they were going to work together, as well as the capability of the partners and the people involved. But we talked about the previous history of both organisations, independently and working together. And that actually, as I said, they were very impressed with that, and it contributed to a very successful outcome. Number 6 is how you will know you've made a difference. Now you'll find this question probably in the second half of the criteria, but what they're trying to do as the funder is to measure change. How do you know you've made the difference? How can you prove it? There are a number of methodologies that you can use, and we certainly have some examples in our evaluation training. But we do use a methodology that actually starts before the project starts or at the beginning. We don't take evaluation as being at the very end and then working backwards. We actually build evaluation in right from the beginning. What can you do? What we do there, is we identify three questions, 3 to 5 questions. And there is a sort of, depending on what methodology we're using, but we do look at the impact of the change. But those questions we need to think about, and therefore when we want to unpack those questions, we go, well, okay, so how are we going to measure that? And therefore what you'll need to have is what is the status at the beginning, right at the start. So if you've got a youth transition program, you need to know how youth are participating, probably in employment or in education, what their attitudes are, attendance rates. There's lots of, quite a few things that you can think of. What do other agencies that work with them? What are their experience? There's quite a number of things that you can actually explore at the benchmark stage. And then you have the points along the way in the actual project plan where you can actually then measure some change. You've got to this milestone. What difference has it made? Are people still participating? Is it going to plan? You may even have to make some changes. That's fine, because that's showing that your project is organic. And then you might go to the next milestone, and again, sort of trying to get those implications of change of people's experience. There's a number of ways that you can do that. You can do them through surveys, you can do them through the funny happy faces sort of like scales. You can do them through focus groups, or you can have one-on-one interviews, or you can get people to tell stories, or video diaries. There's different things you can do. And data, of course, attendance rates, data, etc. So there's a number of tools that you can use, but if you plan them at the beginning, you can capture the information as you go on, and then measure again at the end, which is the summative, but making sure that along the process you are actually being consistent in how you are measuring that change, the data that you're using, so you're not introducing and going new sort of experiences, and you're not going down blind alleys, but you're making sure that you're measuring constantly as you go along. When you're putting together your grant application, everything I've mentioned to date is proving that there is a good, solid structure in place. Do not expect the funder to take a leap of faith. They need to be confident, the risk needs to be low, and there's different ways, not just in the questions, but there may be, for instance, you may be required to supply 3 years of profit and loss statements, etc., your financials, your annual reports. These are all indicators to them that you have been, you've been in business for a period of time, and that you know what you're doing, you're financially sustainable. That's just one risk factor. Risk factors that come into the questions, for instance, we've just discussed your skills and your experience, your past history, your financial projections, even the project plan itself, and the detail in the project plan gives away some solid guidance as to how they can be confident that the money is going to be well spent. As we say, don't expect them to take a leap of faith. Show them that you are capable of being able to use the funding to help them to achieve their bigger picture. And number 7, every funder has their own criteria questions, yet most are asking the same things. And this is why we put together the business case planning document, which you can access on the app stores and on our Get That Grant website. And basically, they're asking these similar questions. The questions being, what is it you want to do? What's the need? What's the opportunity? Show us the data. What are you going to do? Be able to actually go step by step by step by step. What's your management capability? How are you going to manage this project? Who's going to be involved? Are there going to be any partners involved? What about the budget? Who else is going to be contributing? Does the budget demonstrate that that you're actually going to be capable of delivering that project? Or is the budget telling us that you're asking too much money or not enough? It's going to ask, in many cases, around risk. It might ask for a risk plan. Not everyone does, because they say sometimes they hide the risk across the whole of the application, but sometimes there's a specific question about, have you thought about the risks and how are you going to plan for them if and when they do occur? And then the evaluation, how are you going to measure change? How are you going to show that this project has been successful? These are the questions which are asked by the funders, but they may be presented in a different way. Which brings us to the secret sauce. The who, what, where, why, when and how. Because these are what these questions are all about. What you're going to do, who's involved, who are the beneficiaries or people that you're going to be targeting, where are you going to deliver the project, when are you going to deliver the project, how are you going to deliver the project, and of course that question that goes back to the need, which is why. So what's the next step? Well, you can go away and check out a grant for yourself. You can start writing a grant application, or you may be looking for more practice or guidance. And we have a special offer for you. You can go and do a half-day local grant writing program and come away and think, I can do this, but then you sit down and go, I don't know where to start. Or how about a 6-part program that takes you step by step through the grant writing process? You'll be able to go away, find a grant you're interested in, and work your way through it. It doesn't have to be a current grant. It can be a grant that's been and gone, but all the information that you need is there so that you can practice it. And our Get That Grant Writing for Beginners program will help walk you through putting together a dummy application from beginning to end. The program also includes checklists, templates and manuals covering all aspects of applying for grants. So you can use these checklists, templates and manuals when it comes to putting together your own real-life application. All you have to do is to go to getthatgrant.com and follow the links today. And you do that by going to getthatgrant.com, and you're going to be accessing the grant writing help desk. And then what you would do is just select from the top, look for the learning and development, and you'll find the program in there, along with other options, so that if this isn't the right one for you, there will still be another program that will probably fit you better. And if you're not sure, you're welcome to contact us, and we can help put together a package tailored just for you. And there's more. If you're thinking of applying for a few grants, you just don't want to stop at one, and you want more depth, we have a 6-month mentoring program that also includes access to me, Pat, to support you through your first grant applications. In addition to real-time mentoring and grant writing support, we will also focus on project management and impact evaluation. So to find out more and see if it is the fit for you, then contact me at the link. And thank you for your time. If you have questions in any of the services we provide, including a dedicated grant writing done with you service, we invite you to get in touch. So example of what we can do is grant writing, project management, marketing, strategic planning, consulting and mentoring, and partnerships. Don't be shy, schedule a call today. You can change the world.